Nancy is a global communicator and co-founder of Technical Writers Without Borders, a global community of technical communicators who are dedicated to making a difference in the world. Nancy spent 18 years working as a bilingual technical communicator at UNESCO in Paris, and she is currently a senior technical communicator at SAS in a high-touch, customer-facing role supporting success implementation experiences for customers adopting new technology. Her webinar will focus on Tech Writers Without Borders and will give an insight into who they are, what projects are underway to support the current pandemic, and how volunteering on multicultural projects can teach you much needed skills. So if I now stop sharing my screen, hopefully Nancy's there for her to share hers. Lovely, she is, thank you.
I'm going to share my screen. Hello, everybody. I'm probably not going to stay on video like Matt did the entire time.
We can see your slides, Nancy.
Right. I'm getting everything ready here. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to start over. Okay, I think we're good now. Hello, everybody. I am talking to you from Kansas City. It's morning time here. Good afternoon. I'm really pleased to be able to speak to you a little bit about Tech Writers Without Borders. So here are some of the agenda items that we're going to cover. Our mission and objectives. I'm going to showcase a project or two and talk to you about how you can contribute, and then call to action and question and answer period. So who are we? There were 3 of us who co-founded Tech Writers Without Borders in France in 2016. And we are located in the United States, in France, and in Ireland. And you may already know the other people, Tony Risser, who is a project director for a company in Cork, Ireland, Technically Write It, and Stuart Coulshaw, who works for IBM and is living in Grenoble. So Tech Writers Without Borders grew out of the ISTC France chapter, which no longer exists. We saw our membership dwindling. We didn't have a new generation of volunteers to become leaders. The society became very board-centric and membership-centric, and we wanted to put our skills to good use and offer student tech writers and people who were maybe going to start retiring from the profession some opportunities to continue to contribute. I've already been introduced. I'm not going to reintroduce myself, but I did spend 20 years working for UNESCO in Paris before moving back to the United States and working for SAS, which is a statistical software company that is privately owned and headquartered in Cary, North Carolina. And I've had the opportunity, instead of working as a product documentation writer, I actually work on consulting teams that go to the customer site, and we will build a solution to a business problem. And some of the projects have lasted as long as 7 years, and some are very short. So who are we? So Tech Writers Without Borders gives us the opportunity to collaborate without borders. on projects for the greater good and practice our technical communication skills. We match volunteers with nonprofit projects, and you can sign up as an individual or as an organization. And right now, we are interested in forming partnerships to identify new project work. We are actually overwhelmed by the response we received from skilled colleagues wanting to donate some of their time. We are not a membership organization. We're a collective of people with technical communication skills. We help charities, humanitarian organizations, and other nonprofits by improving the quality of the documentation and educational resources they use to train and support their staff and volunteers. Our mission. So, what would Technical Writers Without Borders offer you? This is a chance to use your skills, maybe try something new and different and learn new things. We're doing good and learning at the same time. So what you do could potentially save lives. The projects could be small, bite-size, and demand as little as a few hours of your time, or more involved depending on whether you want to take on a leadership role. So one of the projects I'm going to talk about today was an open source ventilator project that was developed in Ireland. And we had 2 volunteers who spent actually more than 2 hours a week, but they became the documentation managers, managing a group of 20 writers. We're also showcasing the value of our profession. So what you would get out of this is our promise to showcase your work in social media, nonprofits, and other professional and academic organizations. And if you get involved in a student project, you could be a mentor, or if you're a student, you could be mentored. So what kickstarted Tech Writers Without Borders since we were founded a couple of years ago? Well, it was, we realized quickly that at the time that we founded the organization, that we had to figure out a more flexible way to function, probably a more agile way, and not get bogged down in governance. And so there was a long period of low activity, but it changed with COVID-19 and the online world. And we also were able to create a partnership with Technically Write It, or TWI, which is a service-based technical writing firm in Cork, Ireland. So COVID-19 made everybody stop and evaluate. I mean, the whole world came to a stop, unfortunately. And now we're coming back together and we're kind of just doing it. It's more nimble and flexible, more agile, more independent, and we prefer short-term planning. So it is very difficult to do any long-term planning right now in this COVID world. So it sort of became an engine and a boost to us. And we see ourselves as a collective that can spin off independent projects rather than a top-down structured organization, sort of like the waterfall method. So we're now swinging into online work, which means that you can contribute to projects around the world from the safety of your home. And we're taking small steps toward our mission and vision. So our partnership with Technically Write It, TWI, in combination with the COVID-19 crisis, kickstarted our growth. And volunteerism is taking many forms during the pandemic. TWI is committed to making a positive impact on their local and also wider community now. And at the beginning of the COVID crisis, TWI partnered with Tech Writers Without Borders, and we put out a call for volunteer tech writers to support nonprofit projects aimed at fighting the impact of the virus. And we quickly received more than 250 responses. As volunteers, they donated time and technical writing skills to help organizations designing, building, and delivering critical medical supplies. The supported groups tackling the need for symptom reporting, coronavirus-related educational materials, and technical support for the elderly, using messaging apps for the first time to stay in touch with family. And all of that was boosted by technical communication assistance. We would like to personally thank TWI, in particular Joe Cannon, for taking on such a big project called Team Open Source Ventilator and doing all the administrative work for that particular project. As I told you earlier, it was led by Caroline and Sam, and we pulled in 20 writers. TWI stepped aside while everybody took over, the volunteers took over the project completely, and they were engaged a few hours a week, and it was a very cohesive project. I'd also like to just do a shout out to Andy Clark, who worked on another COVID project, which was organized by TWI. So Tech Writers Without Borders is promoting learning new skills, practicing existing ones, mentoring others on student projects, contributing to nonprofit causes, and showcasing the value of our profession. So I'm going to just do a short deviation from Tech Writers Without Borders, but the point is to try to encourage us as a profession to stretch our skills. And I think that cultural awareness is a dimension of communication. And to do this, we need to develop our observation skills and stay open-minded to diverse opinions, needs, and styles of expression. And I would like to challenge you to become more culturally aware. And if you don't already have this experience, how can you learn to be a strategic communicator in multicultural environments? So being able to understand another culture requires, I think, the same skills we use to understand a foreign language. And when I talk about culture, I'm talking about organizational culture, obviously country culture, team culture, and client culture. And experience has taught me that we need to pay real attention to how people communicate, how they write, and how they act. And what do they like to talk about? What are their social rules? How do they manage conflict? And what feelings and values do they share? So we, as technical communicators, often enter the cultural context without any sense of shared history, and we need to fill in the gaps. At UNESCO, for example, where there were 172 countries and multiple cultures and languages and religions and practices and faiths, I had to give up the familiar and the specific, and nothing was like anything else I'd ever experienced. And I basically just had to embrace other people's points of view without judgment. And the conversations required openness and humility and flexibility. And I think these are skills that, you know, I think we all have them. We just need to practice them. So as a technical communicator in both nonprofit and for-profit institutions, I learned to listen, which I think is probably the most important skill that we need. To listen for what wasn't being said, what was merely implied, what was ambiguous and in need of clarification. And I had to know where there was real agreement in the room. And I learned to spot confusion, gaps in perspective, competing goals due to age, language, culture, religion, or education. And if you're in the room and being alert, you can become the relied upon translator for the organization's or the client's needs. I learned how to appreciate different communication styles and to be aware of the diversity of points of view in the room. So my question to you is, are you ready to become a moderator or translator of other cultures? And just to let you know, this beautiful sculpture sits on a sidewalk in Montreal, and it is a group of immigrants who have just arrived. So how can you get involved? We have different types of projects, small individual projects, team projects, and student projects, including mentoring, which we are planning for very soon. our needs will evolve, and just let us hear from you, or for those on the Zoom call, if you want, you can reach out to see, we can reach out to you if you would like to see if you're interested in taking on a leadership position or contributing to a project. They're really marvelous opportunities to grow your skills and experience, whether you're in school, recently in the job market, transitioning out of full-time employment, or between jobs. And we'd love to grow our leadership base to be able to find suitable projects and carry out our mission of learn, impact, and showcase. So you can learn to be more culturally sensitive by practice. You can grow as a communicator by observing and experimenting with different cultural styles. And any volunteer work you do can help. So my advice is to immerse yourself in new cultures. It doesn't have to be done all at once. It can be experienced virtually. Get a job where you use your native tongue, but you have to interact in another language with some of the people in the organization, like management or IT or HR. And look for opportunities in your day job to support communication for brainstorms and project interactions. Be present at the table with the client. Look at other people's styles and how they communicate and work. Be the scribe, be the listener, be the translator, be the moderator, and be the one who inspires the team to connect. So one of the projects that we worked on this summer was called RobotsMali, and it was a summer science quiz to kind of keep the education going. And we are also transitioning now to another RobotsMali project where we actually need people who might have Python programming skills. And one of the community projects was the team open source ventilator, which I'm going to be talking about. So the partnership is supporting global projects such as Open Source Ventilator. It's an Irish-based group of volunteers designing and manufacturing everything from ventilators to face shields for medical professionals. And RespiraWorks, a US-based project designing and developing a low-cost ventilator for the developing world. And RespiraWorks is supported by engineers from SpaceX and NASA. And the projects we're also supporting Comfort for COVID. It's another Irish-based group that is supplying tablets to isolated elderly persons in nursing homes so they can communicate with their family. Volunteer technical writers developed simple, clear instructions for the elderly receiving the tablets so they could use messaging services such as WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, and Skype. And in another project, volunteers provided technical content for a nonprofit tech startup that's developed a symptom tracker and algorithms for use by researchers. RobotsMali is partnering with tech writers to create and collect educational quizzes on science and technology topics for young students in French-speaking African developing countries. And as the traditional RobotsMali summer camp had to be canceled due to the pandemic, these quizzes were used to keep children interested in science and allow them to continue learning from home until face-to-face classes can resume. And we are still looking for volunteer writers to research and create quiz questions in French or English. And our goal is to enable students to learn to feel more engaged in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM subjects, to have fun and be inspired to do things in the future that will help their country. So questions relating to development challenges in Africa or on scientific or technical topics that are applied to these problems are strongly encouraged. And we are also developing a partnership with an organization called Professional Do Good in Cambodia that works with other nonprofits in Cambodia that are looking for resources. And this is our website, Tech Writers Without Borders, and it's kind of a self-service for this science quiz project, and you can just go online and download the template and fill it in and submit it. So Team Open Source Volunteers, they started in March 2020 in response to the COVID-19 crisis. They now have over 3,000 volunteers working on over 40 open source solutions. So the goal of the open source ventilator project was to build a focus team in Ireland to build this field emergency ventilator. And the tech writers who worked on the project, they helped out in several ways. So they helped to create an onboarding process for new writers because there were so many, and they documented content creation processes, resource allocation, project engagement processes. They created templates for consistency, and they also created a style guide that had voice and tone guidelines for writing. And it was important to develop this process so that other writers and other volunteers could work really efficiently because time was limited. They created personas, user stories, job stories, journey maps, wireframes for a website redesign. And they helped launch the Fluid Heart Tracker app and associated educational materials, which I wanted to show you here, which I think are really, really great. And you can go to their website and you can download these materials from anywhere in the world. And I'll be providing you some links at the end of my presentation. So we've been through a huge global disruption. And I just want to say that out of all this chaos, I feel like there have been some really great things that are happening and changes. So how can you contribute? Maybe provide an hour or two of your time every week. We are looking for a nonprofit partnership manager to reach out to nonprofits to promote our resources and identify suitable projects. You can be a recruitment manager and once there's a project, you can just assist with finding the volunteers that match the project needs. You can be a project manager if it's a large project and do all the setup and planning and coordination. You could be a success manager, somebody who gathers feedback from the volunteers and from the nonprofits and publishes success stories to showcase the impact. You can help with nurturing nonprofit partner relationships. You can also help if you would like to practice some website design skills. And you can also work on our academic outreach initiative, which we're in the process of developing now, to identify other institutions who would like to involve their students in our projects. So are you interested in volunteering your skills? Is this something that you think, might be useful to you and that you would enjoy? Are you aware of some suitable projects that are maybe needing volunteers that you could let us know about? And you can pop your answers into the chat box. So I would just like to encourage you to stretch your communication skills. Service is a noble and worthy way to have a positive impact on communities, and especially during a time of crisis. It's easy and it's safe to contribute our skills as technical communicators in all reaches of the globe, by doing it virtually. It's an online world, so timing is good. And especially because there are no other NGOs showcasing our skills for doing good. And this is really our opportunity to make a real difference. And we hope that you'll be able to join us at some point in time in your career. So please go to our website or to our LinkedIn group to see what the latest requests for your skills are. Again, I just want to mention that we're looking for people who have programming skills in Python to work on some online training materials for RobotsMali. And I also provided some links to TWI. And there's a website called TWI COVID-19 Stories where people have written kind of how things that they've done, ways that they've been able to cope with COVID-19. So I think now we can just see if there are any questions or comments in the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
So Nancy, thank you very much for that presentation. That was very good. And just to reiterate what Nancy said, if you've got questions, please put them into the chat box. So there's a question there, Nancy, from Alison Peck. Can you give us an example of a success story somewhere you've already made a difference?
So I think the open source ventilator was one of the examples, but if you go to our website, we actually do have histories on a few of the projects that we have worked on so far.
And one from Jean Rollison, does participation depend on the author contacting you? She says she signed up, but hasn't heard anything yet.
No, not at all. At this point in time, we really are looking for more projects because we have so many people who would like to volunteer. But if you are interested in getting involved in any of the roles that I talked about today, please reach out to me, and it's something that we can talk about.
So I think that's all of the questions that people have. Nancy, thank you very much for doing that presentation.